The rain hammered against the windows of Vincent Romano's penthouse like bullets against steel, each drop a sharp reminder that some nights weren't meant for peace. He sat in his leather chair, a glass of scotch untouched on the mahogany desk before him, reviewing ledgers that most men would never live to see. The clock had just struck midnight when 3 sharp knocks echoed through the silence, urgent, desperate, and entirely unexpected. Vincent's hand moved instinctively toward the drawer where he kept his weapon, but something about those knocks made him pause. In his 15 years running the most powerful crime family in the city, no enemy had ever knocked. They came with guns blazing or bombs planted, not with the tentative rhythm of someone seeking sanctuary. He opened the door to find a woman drenched to the bone, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers, her hands clutching a small pink backpack to her chest like it contained the world's last treasure. She couldn't have been more than 30, with eyes that held the kind of terror Vincent had seen in war zones but never on his doorstep. "Mr. Romano," she gasped, her voice breaking. "Please, I know who you are, I know what you do, and I know I have no right to ask this. But can you hide my daughter for one night? Just one night. They're coming for her." Vincent's jaw tightened. He'd been approached with countless requests over the years, protection money, revenge schemes, business propositions soaked in blood. But never this, never a mother's plea delivered with such raw desperation that it seemed to crack the air itself. "Who's coming?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "My husband," she whispered, and the word came out like poison. "Marcus Chen. He's not the man I married. The gambling debts, the drugs, the people he's gotten involved with, they want collateral now, and he's offered them Sophie. Our 6-year-old daughter. As payment." She swayed on her feet, and Vincent caught her elbow, steadying her. Behind the facade of hardness he'd built over decades, something ancient and protective stirred. He'd built his empire on violence and fear, yes, but even in the darkest corners of his world, certain lines remained sacred. Children were one of those lines. "Where is she?" he demanded. "In the car, sleeping. I gave her medicine for her cough and she dozed off. Please, Mr. Romano, I have nowhere else to go. The police can't help. Marcus has connections there. My family lives 3 states away and he'd find us before we made it halfway. I've been driving around for hours trying to figure out what to do, and then I remembered." She looked up at him with eyes that held a drowning woman's last gasp of hope. "5 years ago, you came into the diner where I work. There was a boy, maybe 8 or 9, being beaten by his father in the parking lot. You stopped your car, got out, and you made that man leave and never come back. You gave the mother money and your card. You told her some things were unforgivable." Vincent remembered. The memory rose up unbidden, the sound of a belt against young flesh, the mother's helpless sobs, his own rage that had momentarily overcome his usual calculated calm. "You remembered that after 5 years?" he asked quietly. "Some things you don't forget," she replied. "The way you looked at that child, I saw something in your eyes. Not the man everyone fears, but someone who understood. Someone who might understand now." Vincent made his decision in the space of a heartbeat. He'd damned himself long ago, made peace with the blood on his hands and the darkness in his soul. But if redemption existed, perhaps it looked like this: a terrified mother and an innocent child who needed the very thing he trafficked in, protection through power. "Bring her inside," he said, stepping back from the door. Quickly. The woman's sob of relief was almost painful to hear. She ran through the rain to a battered Honda, emerging moments later with a small bundle wrapped in a yellow raincoat. The girl's face was peaceful in sleep, innocent in the way that made Vincent remember why he'd sworn certain oaths to himself about who deserved his protection and who deserved his wrath. Inside, Vincent's housekeeper, Maria, a grandmother of 6 who'd worked for him for a decade and knew more about his business than most of his soldiers, took one look at the situation and immediately went into action. She'd raised enough children to recognize a crisis when she saw one. "The guest room, Mr. Romano?" she asked, already reaching for the sleeping child. "Yes." "And Maria, no one knows about this. Not even Tony." Maria nodded, understanding flowing between them without further words. In this house, loyalty was currency, and Maria's account was richer than gold. Vincent turned to the mother, who stood dripping on his marble floor, shaking from cold and fear and the adrenaline crash that came after making impossible decisions. "What's your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Chen." "Sit down, Sarah. You're going to tell me everything." Over the next hour, the story poured out of her like water from a broken dam. Marcus Chen had been a good man once, or so she thought. An accountant, stable, kind. They'd met in college, married young, had Sophie 3 years later. But success had come too easily, and then it had slipped away just as fast. Bad investments, worse friends, and finally the seductive promise of easy money through gambling. The debts had piled up faster than autumn leaves. First to legitimate bookies, then to loan sharks, and finally to people whose names were spoken only in whispers. People who made Vincent's organization look almost respectable by comparison. The Kozlov brothers, Russian enforcers who'd moved into the city 6 months ago, operating with a brutality that made even hardened criminals uneasy. They came to our apartment yesterday, Sarah said, her voice hollow. Not Marcus, he wasn't there. They spoke to me, said Marcus owed them $300,000. Said they'd accept alternative payments. They looked at Sophie's school picture on the wall, and one of them smiled. That smile, she shuddered, I knew what it meant. When Marcus came home, I confronted him. He was high on something, and he laughed. Said the Kozlovs had made him an offer. They'd wipe the debt clean if he gave them Sophie. Said she'd be fine, that they'd find a good home for her somewhere overseas, that we could have other children. Vincent's hand tightened around his glass until his knuckles went white. In his world, violence had rules, structure, reason. What Sarah described was chaos, the kind of depravity that turned his stomach. Where is Marcus now? He asked, his voice deadly calm. I don't know. After he said that, I waited until he passed out, packed a bag for Sophie, and ran. He'll wake up soon, if he hasn't already. He'll know we're gone. And the Kozlovs, they expect delivery tonight. Marcus told me they'd come at dawn if he didn't produce her. Vincent stood, moving to the window where he could see the city lights spreading out below like fallen stars. He'd built his empire by being smarter, more strategic, and when necessary, more ruthless than anyone else. But this situation required more than strategy. It required a message. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Tony, I need you at the penthouse. Now, and bring Sal and Marco. We have a situation. 30 minutes later, his 3 most trusted men sat in his living room, looking between Vincent, Sarah, and occasionally toward the hallway where Sophie slept, unaware that her entire world hung in the balance. Vincent laid out the situation in crisp, efficient sentences. When he finished, Tony, his oldest friend and underboss, let out a low whistle. Boss, the Kozlovs are going to be a problem. They don't play by the old rules. Neither do I when children are involved, Vincent replied. His tone left no room for argument. Here's what's going to happen. Sal, I need you to find Marcus Chen. Bring him here, alive and conscious. Marco, I want everything you can get on the Kozlovs operation, where they run their business, who works for them, what they value. Tony, you're going to make some calls. I want to sit down with the Kozlov brothers tomorrow morning, neutral ground. They might not come, Tony warned. They'll come. Tell them Vincent Romano wants to discuss a business opportunity. Tell them I have something they want. Sarah stood suddenly, her face pale. You're not going to. Sit down, Mrs. Chen, Vincent said, not unkindly. You came to my door asking for help. Let me do this my way. The rest of the night moved with the precision of a well-rehearsed play. Sal found Marcus in a drug den on the east side, too high to understand he was being collected like a debt. Marco returned with information that painted an ugly picture. The Kozlovs ran trafficking operations that spanned 3 states, specializing in the kind of cargo that made Vincent's blood run cold. And Tony secured the meeting for 8 a.m. at a warehouse on the waterfront. Vincent didn't sleep. He sat in his office, thinking about the choices that had led him to this moment. He'd never wanted to be a saint. His father had run the family before him, and his grandfather before that. Violence and power were the family business, passed down like heirlooms. But somewhere along the way, Vincent had made his own rules. No drugs in schools, no hurting civilians who weren't involved in the game, and absolutely no harming children. Some had called him soft for these rules. Those people didn't work for him anymore. At 6 a.m., Sarah emerged from the guest room, looking like she'd aged a decade overnight. She's still sleeping, she said quietly. Maria gave her breakfast in bed. She thinks we're on an adventure, staying at a friend's fancy house. Keep her thinking that, Vincent said. By tonight, this will be over. What are you going to do? What I do best, he replied. Negotiate from a position of strength. The warehouse was neutral territory, jointly owned by several families and used only for important meetings. Vincent arrived with Tony and 6 armed men. The Kozlov brothers came with twice that number, a clear statement of their opinion of their own importance. Alexei and Dmitry Kozlov were exactly what Vincent expected, young, arrogant, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed new money. They smiled with mouths full of gold teeth as they approached. "Mr. Romano," Alexei said, his accent thick. "We are honored. We hear you have business proposal." Vincent didn't smile back. "I have Marcus Chen." The brothers exchanged glances. "The accountant, this is what you wish to discuss. You're expecting delivery of a 6-year-old girl to settle his debt." Dimitri's smile widened. "Ah, someone talks too much, yes. But this is not your concern, Mr. Romano. This is private business arrangement. You made it my concern when you tried to traffic a child in my city." The temperature in the room dropped. Alexei's smile faded. "Your city, we were not aware you claimed trafficking territory. We thought you were old school. Legitimate business, construction contracts, union deals. We thought you had gone soft." "Let me clarify something," Vincent said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I don't traffic in human lives. But I do control this city, every street, every corner, every shadow. And here's what's going to happen. Marcus Chen's debt to you is erased. In exchange, you're going to forget he exists, forget his family exists, and you're going to find your business operations somewhere else." Alexei laughed, a harsh sound. "And why would we agree to this? You think because you have reputation, we should fear you? Times change, old man. We have connections too, money too, guns too." Vincent nodded slightly. On cue, Marco stepped forward with a folder, placing it on the table between them. "That's a complete list of your operations. Warehouses, shipping routes, corrupt officials on your payroll, bank accounts in the Caymans. It's comprehensive." Dmitry reached for the folder, his face darkening as he flipped through the pages. Vincent watched his expression shift from confidence to concern to barely concealed fear. "You've been in my city for 6 months, Vincent continued. "Did you really think I wasn't paying attention? I know about the shipment coming in next week, the one that's supposed to be your biggest payday. I know about the federal agent you think you've bought but who actually reports to someone who reports to me. I know that your boss in Moscow is already unhappy with your expansion into territory he didn't authorize." "This is threat?" Alexei asked, but his voice had lost its swagger. "This is business," Vincent replied. "You have 2 choices. Walk away from Marcus Chen, shut down your trafficking operations in this city, and I forget this folder exists. Keep pushing, and by tomorrow morning, every law enforcement agency on the East Coast has this information. Your bosses in Moscow know you've been skimming profits, and your competitors know exactly when and where your next shipment arrives." The silence stretched out, broken only by the distant sound of ships in the harbor. Finally, Alexei nodded slowly. "We accept terms. Chen's debt is erased. We move operations to Philadelphia." "Good choice," Vincent said. He turned to leave, then paused. "And gentlemen, if I ever hear about you dealing with children again, anywhere, I won't be this generous." Some things are unforgivable. Back at the penthouse, Sarah was pacing the floor when Vincent walked in. She ran to him immediately. "What happened? Are we safe?" "You're safe. The debt is gone. The Kozlovs won't bother you again." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief so profound it shook her entire body. Maria appeared with Sophie, who looked confused by her mother's tears but happy to see her. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "Mr. Vincent's house is so cool. Maria showed me a room with a whole library, and there's a pool on the roof." Sarah pulled her daughter close, kissing her head repeatedly. "Happy tears, baby, just happy tears." Vincent watched them for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with satisfaction or power and everything to do with seeing genuine joy restored to someone who'd nearly lost everything. "What about Marcus?" Sarah asked quietly, over Sophie's head. "He's in a facility that specializes in addiction," Vincent said. "He'll stay there for 6 months, minimum. When he gets out, if he comes near you or Sophie, he'll answer to me." "You have my word. I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Just be a good mother to that little girl. That's payment enough." As Sarah and Sophie prepared to leave, with a new apartment arranged, first 3 months' rent paid, and a job lined up at a diner on the safer side of town, Sophie ran back to Vincent one last time. "Thank you for letting us stay," she said solemnly, holding out a drawing she'd made. It showed stick figures of her mother, and a tall man she'd labeled, Mr. V. They were all smiling. Vincent took the drawing carefully, as if it were made of glass. "You're welcome, Sophie. Be good for your mom." After they left, Tony found Vincent still holding the drawing, staring at it like it contained the secrets of the universe. "You know this is going to get around," Tony said. Words already spreading. Vincent Romano, the guy who took on the Kozlovs over a kid he didn't know. "Let it spread," Vincent replied. "Maybe it'll remind people that power means nothing if you don't use it for something beyond yourself. You've changed, boss, or maybe you've always been this way and I'm just noticing." Vincent thought about that knock on his door at midnight, about a desperate mother and a sleeping child, about the choices that defined a man more than his reputation ever could. "Maybe I have changed," he admitted. "Or maybe I just remembered why I got into this business in the first place. My father used to say we protected the neighborhood, that we were guardians even if we had to be monsters to do it. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that, but tonight reminded me that power without purpose is just cruelty with a crown." He placed Sophie's drawing in his desk drawer, next to the only other personal item he kept there, a photo of his own daughter, lost to cancer 15 years ago. She would have been 32 now. Maybe a mother herself. Besides, he added, his voice rougher than usual, someone has to draw the line. Someone has to say this far and no further. If men like us don't protect the innocent, who will? Tony nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. "So what now? Now we make sure everyone knows the rules have changed. No trafficking, no children, no exploitation of the helpless. Anyone who wants to operate in this city plays by those rules or they don't play at all. That's going to make us enemies." "I've had enemies my entire life," Vincent said with a slight smile. "At least now they'll be the right enemies." In the weeks that followed, Vincent Romano's reputation shifted. He was still feared, still powerful, still not a man to cross. But added to that fear was something new, a grudging respect, a sense that beneath the steel exterior existed a code of honor that meant something. Sarah sent him letters occasionally, updating him on Sophie's progress. The little girl had nightmares for a while but was thriving in her new school. Sarah had enrolled in night classes, working toward a nursing degree. Marcus had completed his program and moved to another state, signing away his parental rights without contest. Vincent kept those letters in the same drawer as Sophie's drawing, small reminders that sometimes the most important decisions happened at midnight, when desperate souls knocked on doors they'd never imagined approaching and found unexpected sanctuary. Years later, Vincent would tell Tony that the night Sarah Chen knocked on his door was the night he truly became the man his daughter would have wanted him to be. It wasn't about redemption, men like him were beyond that simple comfort. But it was about choice, about using the power he'd accumulated to draw lines that mattered, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to remember that even in the darkest empire, some lights must never be allowed to go out. The knock had come at midnight, but its echo would resonate through the rest of Vincent Romano's life. A reminder that monsters could still choose to guard the innocent, that power could serve something beyond itself, and that sometimes, in the space of a single night, a man could remember what it meant to be human.